All right, let's talk about Family Guy, Season 20, Episode 17, titled The Talented Alana Fitzgerald. You know, the same episode that dropped on April 10th, 2022. Now, what was happening in the world back then? Well, America was still figuring out what to do with its post-pandemic hangover. There were rumblings about the economy that would only get louder, and honestly, most of us were just trying to remember what day it was. Meanwhile, Seth MacFarlane and his team were busy cooking up this little gem. You have to wonder, while the rest of us were stressing about gas prices in the news, what exactly were they thinking when they decided to make the main plot about a suspiciously talented young woman charming her way into the Griffin household? Was it a commentary on opportunity, on desperation, or just a random thought that popped into someone's head at 3 a.m. after too much coffee? This episode feels like a direct response to those vague, unsettling feelings we all had that things were just a little off. It's like they tapped into that collective anxiety and said, let's make a whole episode about it, but with more fart jokes. It's a pretty wild story, and it takes some genuinely dark turns, especially when Lois starts to feel like she's being replaced in her own home. Seriously, by the end of it, you'll be asking yourself if this was a comedy or a psychological thriller disguised as one. You guys have been so awesome sticking around for these deep dives. If you're liking the energy, you should totally hit that subscribe button. It's like the easiest way to make sure you don't miss any more of these breakdowns. And honestly, it helps us keep the lights on and the sarcasm flowing. Think of it as an investment in more of this, you know? Now, this episode on the surface is all about Alana, this seemingly perfect young woman who shows up at the Griffin's door, desperate for a way to pay for her Juilliard application fee. Lois, being Lois, feels all sorts of sympathy and decides to hire her as an all-around helper. And boy, does Alana help. She cooks, she cleans, she drives the kids, she even seems to have a knack for, well, everything. The initial vibe is super wholesome, right? It feels like a classic Family Guy setup where a new character comes in and shakes things up, usually leading to chaos. But this episode takes a sharp left turn. It's not just about Alana being good at her job, it's about how too good she is, and how that perfection starts to unravel the family dynamic, especially for Lois.
Lois starts to feel like she's being pushed out of her own life, replaced by this flawless newcomer. It's a really interesting psychological angle for a show that usually relies on pure absurdity. It's like they wanted to explore that nagging feeling of inadequacy we all get sometimes, but wrap it in a story that involves Peter accidentally wearing a bra. The writing, for the most part, is pretty sharp. The jokes land and the pacing feels deliberate, especially in how they build Lois's paranoia. You can see the gears turning as she starts to question everything, and the show does a good job of making you question it too. Is Alana genuinely nice and helpful, or is there something more sinister at play? And the way they weave in all the pop culture references, from classic movies to the theme song itself, is peak Family Guy. It's an episode that feels both familiar and surprisingly fresh, even for a show that's been on this long. It's definitely not a throwaway episode. It's got some real substance to it, exploring themes of ambition, identity, and the anxieties of modern life. It's one of those episodes that might not be the loudest or the most outrageous, but it sticks with you because it actually has something to say. It's a solid entry in the season. Not necessarily a groundbreaking classic, but it's well-crafted and engaging. It manages to be funny and creepy at the same time, which is a tough balance to strike. The direction feels pretty standard for the show, but there are moments where the visual storytelling really amplifies Lois's growing dread, making you feel it right along with her. Overall, I'd say it's a really well-executed episode that delivers on both laughs and a bit of unsettling intrigue. It makes you think, even while you're laughing at Peter's latest dumb scheme. It's one of those rare instances where the show balances its typical silliness with a surprisingly mature exploration of anxieties that many viewers can relate to, even if they don't realize it. And that's a difficult tightrope to walk. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, shall we? One of the earliest moments that really sets the tone, and honestly just makes me laugh every time, is when Stewie is introducing Alana. He's got that whole narrator voice going, and he's laying out this whole backstory, which is already a classic Family Guy trope. But then he pauses, looks directly at the camera, and basically asks, "Do you really not know that I'm Stewie, the talking baby?" The sheer meta-commentary in that moment, the breaking of the fourth wall to acknowledge the audience's familiarity with the character, is brilliant.
It's like the writers are winking at us, saying, yeah, we know you know, but we're gonna tell you anyway because it's funny. It's that kind of self-awareness that makes this show work, even when it's doing something as simple as introducing a new character. My take on it? It's pure Stewie. He's always been the most self-aware character, and this is just him leaning into it. What it's trying to say is that the show itself knows it's a show, and it's comfortable playing with those expectations. If I were rewriting it, I'd have Stewie add something like, "Honestly, if you're still watching and don't know that, you're probably watching for the commercials." That would have been a little extra jab. And personally, I love that he did that. It's a moment that shows the writers are still having fun with the format. Then you have the whole setup with Alana's financial struggles and Lois's immediate empathy. She's talking about wanting to audition for Juilliard, but not being able to afford the $1,200 application fee. And Lois, bless her heart, jumps right in. But here's the funny part. Lois is also worried about the $7 for Alana's sandwich money. This contrast, this immediate jump from a huge, life-changing sum of money to a measly $7, is peak Family Guy satire. It shows how real people, even with good intentions, are always thinking about the immediate practical stuff. Peter, of course, is oblivious, just yelling over the Patriots game. He's only concerned about the sandwich money, which is such a Peter thing to do. It perfectly encapsulates their marriage. Lois with the grand gestures, Peter with the immediate, often selfish, concerns. What this scene is showing us is the everyday reality of good intentions bumping up against financial limitations. It's that little voice in your head that says, "Yes, let's help the struggling artist," followed immediately by, "But can we afford dinner tonight?" My alternative? I would have Peter chime in with something like, $7 for a sandwich? That's highway robbery. I can get a whole loaf of bread and some bologna for that. Just to double down on his cheapness and make Lois's dilemma even more relatable. It's a classic Family Guy move to juxtapose genuine emotion with ridiculous, self-serving concerns. The moment where Alana is welcomed into the family and the introductions start is gold. Lois is all excited, and Alana is trying to be polite. Then we meet Chris, and his immediate creepy thought about looking through the bathroom keyhole is just Chris.
And then Peter, doing his usual thing, says he enjoys middle-of-the-night hallway cereal. Classic Peter. But the real standout is Meg. She's introduced and she says, "I'm Meg. Don't touch my drum set or you're dead meat." And Stewie's narration immediately cuts in. No one had ever heard of Meg's drum set before this moment. That is such a perfectly executed jab at Meg's character and her usual lack of presence. It's like the show is acknowledging that she's often an afterthought, and even the other characters are surprised by her defining characteristics. It's brutal, but it's so funny because it's true within the context of the show. It's a meta joke that highlights how the writers themselves often forget about Meg. What it's revealing is the show's writers' perspective on their own characters, especially the less popular ones. My take? That's the best line of the episode. If I were to change anything, it would be to have Peter immediately ask, "Meg, you have a drum set? Since when? Can you play Wipeout?" Just to prolong the joke and Peter's confusion. It's a moment that truly defines the show's humor, taking a character's perceived lack of importance and turning it into a punchline. Then we get to Alana's cooking. The family is eating tacos and nachos, and it's so good they stand up and cheer. Joe and Bonnie show up, and Joe's description of his meal is just something else. Barely thawed trout and white rice. And he follows it with, "This trout's the lucky one. It's over for him." That's dark humor, and it's delivered in such a deadpan way by Patrick Warburton that it's hilarious. And then Joe's fascination with the pool and his cannonball into an empty pool, followed by the "lalabnana lalak," cannonball backwards, is just perfect physical comedy. It's a scene that's so absurd, it circles back to being brilliant. The contrast between the Griffin's gourmet meal and Joe's sad-sounding dinner is stark. What this moment is doing is showcasing Alana's impact on the household, turning even the most mundane things into something special. It also uses Joe and Bonnie as a way to externalize the family's newfound happiness. My revision? I'd have Bonnie try to one-up Joe's meal description, saying something like, "Oh yeah, well, I made some slightly less frozen fish sticks and some instant mashed potatoes that are questionable," just to show that their culinary situation isn't great either, making Alana's arrival even more impactful. It's a classic Family Guy move to use side characters to amplify the main storyline's effects, and here it works perfectly.
The "too good to be true" line, followed by Stewie's riff on stereotypes, is a prime example of the show's edgy humor. Stewie says Alana is too good to be true, like a single Jewish doctor, and then immediately corrects himself. Doctors can be girls too, so shut up. This is a classic Stewie move, making a slightly offensive generalization and then immediately recognizing its flaws and correcting himself, all while being condescending. It's that push and pull that makes him so funny. He's smart enough to know better, but he says it anyway for the reaction. Then the episode dives into the All About Eve comparison, and Stewie's extended breakdown of similar films for different demographics is comedy gold. If you're under 70, a real single white female moment. Or, if you're under 50, a real swim fan moment. Or, if you're black, the Beyoncé movie Obsessed, which I haven't seen but hear real good things about. He even stops to clarify that Lisa from Obsessed is the character who's like Alana. This is the show flexing its cultural awareness, or at least its ability to joke about it. What it reveals is a writer's room that's really plugged into pop culture and knows its audience's varied tastes and ages. My take, that whole section is a masterclass in pop culture referencing. But the Beyoncé movie Obsessed bit could have been funnier. Maybe he could have said, or if you're really niche, the animated short about the sentient toaster who falls in love with a waffle iron. That would have been more unexpected. It's a moment that solidifies the episode's theme of deceptive appearances and plays on the audience's familiarity with various forms of media. And then Lois wakes up. The whole time Alana has been there, Lois is blissfully unaware, sleeping in. The contrast between Alana's hyper-efficiency, making breakfast, taking care of everyone, and Lois's typical morning routine is stark. Chris says, Alana made them eggs with falafel, or as she calls it, falafel a la Alana. It's hard to say, but they're delicious. And then he adds, with that classic Chris delivery, I take adult-sized poops, but I have kid-sized parts. I could die from this. That is some deeply unsettling Chris dialogue, and it's delivered with such innocence that it's horrifyingly funny. Lois's reaction, yeah, that's part of why I don't let Peter do that, is just classic Lois, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. The whole scene is designed to show how Alana has completely taken over, making everyone's lives easier, but at the expense of Lois's own role.
It's a subtle invasion, and Lois is the only one who's starting to feel it, even if she can't articulate it. What's being shown here is the perfect illusion of helpfulness, where Alana is so good that it actively erases Lois's contributions. My idea for an improvement? When Chris talks about his poops, Peter should walk in, hear it, and just say, Chris, we've talked about this. That's not for polite conversation. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go find that bra Lois is missing, just to pivot to Peter's weirdness and deflect from Chris's unsettling statement. It highlights how the family operates on different wavelengths, and Alana is somehow navigating all of them. The dialogue between Alana and Meg about scissoring and then cribbage is another moment that really highlights the show's willingness to push boundaries. Meg, who's usually a bit of a mess, is suddenly knowledgeable about this sexual act, and then pivots to cribbage with pegging. It's a bizarre, almost jarring scene. Alana's explanation that she had an older babysitter show her is just the cherry on top of the weirdness. Mayor West's cameo, with his neighbor's kid explaining things to him, is also a classic Family Guy gag, grounding the absurdity in his usual cluelessness. He's essentially a human punchline. This scene is designed to shock and amuse, playing on the audience's discomfort with overt sexuality, especially when it involves characters who are usually innocent or awkward. What it reveals is the show's consistent effort to find humor in the taboo. My pitch to make it even weirder? After the cribbage talk, have Alana suggest they also try a little light BDSM with a side of synchronized swimming, just to escalate the absurdity beyond anything anyone would expect. It's a moment that really shows the writers weren't afraid to be controversial, even if it means making things super awkward for the viewer. Peter's interaction with Alana when she's cleaning the freezer is another example of his obliviousness and Alana's subtle manipulation. He's up at 2 a.m. assuming it's Santa, which is already a funny character beat for Peter. Then Alana, looking almost seductive, is cleaning out the freezer. Peter's line, "Oh, sorry, I was just cleaning out the freezer." Okay, any popsicles that say property of Peter Griffin are mine. Got it. You see anything else you like? I can think of one or two things. It's playful, but also incredibly creepy given his age and Alana's youth. Alana's response, "I wouldn't consider an amuse-bouche a full course unto itself," is a sophisticated put-down that Peter completely misses. He's just happy to share a popsicle. This scene is all about the power dynamics at play. Alana is clearly in control, playing Peter like a fiddle, while he's just amused by her. It shows how easily Alana can manipulate the men in the household. What it's revealing is Alana's calculated charm and Peter's gullibility. My take? Peter should have responded to amuse-bouche with, "Is that like a tiny fortune cookie? Because I love those little jokes." just to show his utter lack of sophistication and how Alana is speaking a different language. It's a moment that perfectly illustrates Alana's ability to exploit the weaknesses of the Griffin men. Brian's conversation with Lois about her worries is a key scene that shifts the narrative towards suspicion. Lois confides in Brian, saying she's worried about Alana, that she's maybe a little too good, you know? Brian, in his typical cool guy way, dismisses it at first, saying she seems cool. But then Lois pushes. Sometimes I feel like maybe she's after something. I just don't know what it is. Brian's response, well, maybe you're right. I'll tell you what, I'll talk to Alana and try to sniff out what's going on with her, is the turning point. He's the investigator, the one who's going to uncover the truth. This is where the episode moves from a comedy about a helpful guest to a subtle thriller about a potential threat. It's Lois's insecurity manifesting, and Brian, the intellectual one, is stepping in to solve it. It's a good way to move the plot forward and create some suspense. What it's showing is the subtle ways people can feel threatened by others, and how sometimes the person closest to the threat is the last to realize it. My rewrite? When Lois says she feels Alana is after something, Brian should say, "Don't worry, Lois. I'll get to the bottom of this. I'll interrogate her, maybe even use my canine charm. If all else fails, I'll just stare at her intensely until she confesses." Just to inject more of Brian's personality into the investigation. It's a pivotal moment that allows the audience to start questioning Alana's motives alongside Lois. Brian's confrontation with Alana is a fantastic scene where the power dynamic shifts. Brian tries to be tough, telling Alana to lay off the housework because Lois feels displaced. Alana, however, is completely unfazed. She brushes her fur, sings a whole song, and then basically tells Brian he's cute. She sings, "I'll be loving you," and it's this incredibly seductive performance that completely disarms Brian. He's like a puppy dog, and she's the sophisticated manipulator. Her lines like, "We all know you're just a big sweetheart," and "Even if you were able to be mean to me, I'd still be loving you," are designed to break him down. The entire song sequence, with its romantic lyrics juxtaposed with the underlying tension, is a masterstroke. It's funny, it's weird, and it's incredibly effective. What this moment reveals is Alana's absolute dominance. She can charm and disarm anyone, even the seemingly unshakable Brian. My idea to make it even more epic? After the song, Alana should say, "Now about that pegging you were talking about with Meg earlier. Tell me more." Just to tie back to that earlier bizarre conversation and escalate the shock value. It's a scene that showcases Alana's manipulative genius and Brian's ultimate weakness, his ego and his desire to be liked. The confrontation between Lois and Alana after Alana has dyed her hair red and cut Lois out of photos is a boiling point. Lois is understandably furious. Alana's excuse, "I'm a huge Kathy Griffin fan," is an incredibly weak attempt to justify her actions, and Lois's response, "Well, that doesn't add up. No one is a huge Kathy Griffin fan," is a brilliant, almost dismissive insult. Then Alana admits, "Alana and I did some scissoring last night," which is a thinly veiled lie and an insult to Lois's intelligence. Lois's response, "Is that so? Oh, we were just having a little fun and got carried away. Tell you what, I'll fix all the pictures as soon as I get back from doing the groceries," is pure passive aggression. She's fuming, but she's not confronting directly. She then says, "I do the groceries, Alana. You won't like me when I'm groceries," a clear threat. This is where Lois finally snaps. She's had enough, and she's going to take matters into her own hands. It's a pivotal moment that shows Lois's transformation from a passive victim to an active player. What this scene illustrates is the culmination of Lois's anxieties. She's been pushed too far, and her protective instincts are kicking in. My twist? When Alana says she's a Kathy Griffin fan, Lois should pull out her phone and say, "Oh yeah? Let's see your impression then, tough guy." Then Alana would have to attempt a terrible Kathy Griffin impression, making her lie even more obvious. It's a scene where the tension finally breaks, and you see Lois ready to fight for her family. The final twist, where Lois gives Alana the money for Juilliard, but Alana reveals her true colors by hiring someone to kill Lois, is the ultimate subversion. Lois, thinking she's getting rid of Alana by helping her achieve her dream, is actually signing her own death warrant. Alana's casual line, "Here's $1,200. I want Lois Griffin dead by morning," is delivered with such cold detachment, it's chilling. And then the melodica fanfare for 20th Century Fox played discordantly? That's just pure, unadulterated Family Guy absurdity, a final joke that completely undercuts the seriousness of the attempted murder plot. It's the ultimate punchline to the whole episode's premise. What this moment achieves is a complete reversal of expectations, showing that Alana wasn't just a manipulative houseguest, but a genuine sociopath. It's a dark, twisted ending that perfectly fits the show's brand of humor. My alternative ending, Alana hires the hitman, but the hitman is Quagmire, who shows up and is all giggity. You want me to ice the mommy? All right, all right, all right. And then he tries to hit on Alana. That would be classic Family Guy mayhem. It's a shock ending that leaves you questioning everything, and it's delivered with that signature Family Guy blend of darkness and silliness. Now, for the characters in this episode. Peter, as usual, is a walking id, completely unaware of the storm brewing around him. His main concerns are cereal and the Patriots, and Alana's ability to magically make his life easier is all he cares about. He's the oblivious husband, the one who would probably invite the wolf into the sheepfold if it offered to do the laundry. He's not a bad guy, just incredibly simple-minded, and this episode uses him as a foil for Lois's growing unease. His best moment is probably his absolute joy at the tacos and nachos, and his cluelessness about Alana's true intentions, which is both funny and a bit sad. He's not developed here. He's just Peter being Peter, which is the point. Lois, on the other hand, is the emotional core of this episode. She starts with the best intentions, wanting to help Alana, but her insecurity and fear of being replaced quickly take over. We see her paranoia build, her suspicion grow, and finally her determination to take action. Her journey from sympathetic host to vengeful mother is the central arc. Her moment of snapping and threatening Alana with the grocery list is her breaking point, and it's satisfying to see her reclaim her agency. This episode really shows the strength of Lois as a character, that even when faced with something so unsettling, she's not going to back down. Stewie, of course, is the narrator and the smart one.
He sets up the story with his usual dry wit, and his meta-commentary throughout is a highlight. He's the observer who sees everything, and his explanations of pop culture references are always entertaining. He's used effectively here to guide the audience and provide comedic commentary. His presence grounds the episode in the show's established absurdity, while also moving the plot forward. He's not particularly challenged, but his role is crucial for the storytelling. Chris is, well, Chris. He's consistently oblivious and says the most unsettling things with a straight face. His comments about his bodily functions are disturbing and hilarious in equal measure. He's the embodiment of innocent ignorance, and Alana's ability to charm him is just another example of her skill. He's not given much agency, but his dialogue always provides a weird, unexpected laugh. He serves his purpose as the naive child character. Meg gets a moment, sort of. Her drum set line is a good callback to her usual lack of presence, and her brief conversation with Alana about scissoring and pegging is bizarrely memorable. It's one of those instances where Meg is given a storyline that's so strange it almost makes her interesting, but it's fleeting. She's still the butt of jokes, but here she's also a pawn in Alana's larger game, which is kind of a step up. Brian acts as the investigator and the voice of reason, or at least the closest thing to it. He's the one Lois confides in, and he's the one who tries to confront Alana. His failed attempt to intimidate Alana, followed by her seductive serenade, is a great scene that shows Alana's power over him. He's not immune to charm, and the episode highlights that. His character arc in this episode is about realizing that even he, the intellectual and cool one, can be played. Alana, the titular character, is a masterclass in performance. She's charming, capable, and manipulative, embodying that too-good-to-be-true persona perfectly. Her ability to weave her way into the family and exploit their weaknesses is what drives the plot. She's a genuinely unsettling villain because she's so outwardly pleasant. The episode relies heavily on her performance, and she delivers. She's not just a guest character, she's the catalyst for the episode's entire dramatic and comedic arc. Okay, hidden gems. First, the opening theme song. Usually it's just a gag, but here the lyrics about violence in movies and sex on TV and the search for good old-fashioned values feel like a direct setup for the episode's plot.
It's like the show is acknowledging that it itself often relies on those things, but this episode is going to explore what happens when genuine, albeit twisted, values are introduced. It's a more thematic opening than usual. Second, Stewie's narration constantly breaks the fourth wall, not just to acknowledge the audience, but to comment on the show's own tropes and characters. The bit about Meg's drum set being unheard of until that moment is a perfect example. It's a wink and a nod to the longtime fans, saying, "We know you're paying attention to the little things." Third, the use of Wagner's bridal chorus during Stewie's introduction of Alana is a really interesting choice. It's usually associated with weddings, with unions, and here it's used to introduce someone who will ultimately try to tear the family apart. It's a subtle, ironic touch that adds a layer of foreboding. Fourth, when Peter is watching the Patriots game and yells over it, the game itself provides commentary on the situation. When the Patriots fumble and then score a touchdown, it mirrors the unpredictable nature of Alana's arrival and her subsequent positive impact, at least initially. It's a clever way to use background action to underscore the main plot. Fifth, the movie references Stewie makes for different demographics are a hidden gem in themselves. The way he breaks down who would know what movie is so specific and funny, showing a deep understanding of how different age groups consume media. It's not just a quick reference, it's a whole little character moment for Stewie. What if they did it differently? First, the whole ending where Alana hires a hitman could have been played for more actual dark comedy rather than just a sudden twist. Instead of just saying, "I want Lois Griffin dead," what if she tried to hire Joe? Joe, being Joe, would get confused and think she was ordering a hit on his car and then tried to arrest the hitman for illegal parking. That would have been pure Family Guy chaos. Second, the scene where Brian is seduced by Alana's song. Instead of Brian being completely disarmed, what if he tried to one-up her? What if during her romantic serenade, Brian started improvising his own dog-themed love song, full of barks and slobber references, and Alana, for the first time, actually looked disgusted? It would have been a moment where Brian, for once, didn't fall for the charm. Third, the initial premise of Alana needing money for Juilliard. What if she didn't need it for Juilliard? What if she claimed she needed it to fund a rare exotic pet sanctuary, and then once she got the money, she used it to buy a giant, menacing sculpture of herself? That would have made her motive a lot more overtly narcissistic and vain from the start, leaning into the All About Eve theme even harder. All right, verdict time. I'm giving this episode a solid 7.8 out of 10. That 0.8 is for Stewie's meta-commentary and Alana's terrifyingly charming performance. The reason it's not higher is because the hitman ending, while shocking, felt a little too abrupt. It's like they had this psychological thriller building up, and then just decided to end it with a standard Family Guy murder-for-hire gag. It lost some of the nuance they'd built. What would have pushed it to an 8.5? If Lois had actively foiled Alana's assassination attempt in a clever, comedic way, rather than Alana just being thwarted by her own hired help not being able to do the job properly, or by Peter's sheer obliviousness. That would have cemented Lois as the hero of her own story. This episode is definitely for the fans who appreciate the show's darker humor and its ability to tell a story with a bit more substance. The casual viewer might be a little put off by the unsettling tone and the swiftness of the ending. But for those of us who've been watching for years, it's a really solid episode that shows Family Guy can still deliver genuine surprises and compelling narratives. It's a testament to the show's longevity that they can still explore themes of ambition, insecurity, and deception with such effective, albeit twisted, humor, even in Season 20. It's like opening that slightly unsettling Christmas present. You're not entirely sure what you got, but you know it's going to be memorable. And who could ask for more?